we have a choice of how we're going to react to this, how we're going to live our life, how we're going to deal with this. And I said, the show must go on.
Cancer doesn't stop you from living. Keep living.
I was also in 4 other productions at the time. And I remember telling my oncologist that treatment's going to have to wait because I'm booked up.
You're talking about discussing the life you wanted to have after cancer before you start, and aligning your medical team to be on board as much as is possible.
To have a doctor so enthusiastic about survival and as happy as you are that you're on the road to recovery, there's nothing more special than that. I understand what they're going through, and I wanted to be an example of you can't let cancer stop you.
Be part of a Tony-bound Broadway reading, and now you have to start lymphoma treatment. Tell us about that and how you thought about the postponement.
Yes, well, it was a difficult decision. However, your health has to come first. And I think the most important thing is if I didn't start treatment right away because I was stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I wouldn't be around to do any Broadway show ever or any show after that. So I think the most important thing was that it was a postponement, not a cancellation, that I had to put a pause on my life because I was in the fight of my life. And if I were to go and postpone the treatment, I would probably not be talking to you today because the cancer was that aggressive. So for me, it was more important to get back on my feet and become cancer-free or in remission or able to perform again as a person who is not affected by cancer.
And I have to imagine, Valerie, that moment was disappointing.
Oh,
really upsetting. Like, how did you manage your own thought process, your own mental health, as you're on the precipice of something you'd really been excited about, and you get this cancer curveball?
Right. Well, the creators of the Broadway-bound show that ended up being a Tony Award-winning Broadway musical was Urinetown, and the show's creators were Greg Codis, who wrote the book and lyrics, and Mark Holman, who wrote the music and lyrics. And they have been so supportive of me. I'm still friends with them to this day. And in fact, because of what happened, I immortalized Urinetown in the Pink Hulk play, Pink Hulk, One Woman's Journey to Find the Superhero Within, my solo show, that I do a snippet of their song, given full permission, and they're so supportive. And that's part of the show, part of the Pink Hulk show. So even though I wasn't on the Broadway circuit with them, they're still in my show. And I'm so grateful for them. And I think it was very difficult because not only was I in this reading, I was also in 4 other productions at the time through April. And I remember telling my oncologist that treatment's going to have to wait because I'm booked up. She looked at me with 8 eyes and said to me, Valerie, if you don't treat this, this is fatal. And then I said, oh, well, maybe I better postpone those shows. The other thing that was also very important to me, I'm a singer, and one of the chemo drugs would maybe affect my vocal cords. So before I started treatment, I got tests and imaging of my vocal cords to compare after the chemo. And luckily they weren't affected, but there were preventative measures that I wanted to put into place to help me get through this, like trying best as I can to figure out how cancer and chemo would be affecting me in the long run, what I needed to do. And ultimately, because of the cancer, a show was born out of it. So I'm so grateful for having the cancer 3 times because I have this kick-ass cancer show. And I think that helped me heal as well. And I did audio diaries during this time because, as we know, chemo is very draining, and even journaling at one point was very difficult and very draining. So I decided to just record myself, and those recordings ended up becoming the play. So I think it was really hard at first, but you make lemonade out of lemons, even though it's a cliche, but it's true.
So it's really interesting because you're talking about discussing the life you wanted to have after cancer before you start and aligning your medical team to be on board as much as is possible with ensuring you get to have the life you want afterwards.
Absolutely.
Which is so important. And I don't think people who are newly diagnosed realize not only is it okay to talk about the quality of life you want, but it actually helps.
It does. And even this is also important because cancer doesn't have to stop your life the minute you get diagnosed. In fact, I had already had a trip planned to go to the Caribbean with my boyfriend. And I asked if I could still go. I said, because literally I was diagnosed before we left. And the doctors were like, well, what's one more week? So go. So I ended up going to the Caribbean. And then it was through the Club Med, and you go on an airplane with the same people and you go back with the same people and you meet all of them and they're wonderful. Well, it turns out that one of the participants in this trip happened to be a lymphoma night nurse at the hospital I was being treated at. And she ended up being one of my night nurses when I started treatment. So it was just it was just meant to be. And if I hadn't have gone on that trip, I wouldn't have had this extra support of a nurse that actually ended up being my night nurse because of this trip.
First off, I love that you went on the trip. I think it's awesome that you met your night nurse and you had this shared experience. And I think it's really interesting that you look at your 3 experiences with cancer as a creative font. And from that, you've created this kick-ass one-woman show and gone from being someone waiting or hoping to be cast to being somebody who is in charge.
Absolutely. And it's so great that you're saying this. And I've, first of all, and you're amazing with your Crushing the Cancer Curveball book. Congrats to you on that. But I think you're absolutely right, because with this show, it ended up being such a godsend, because I'm able to perform it anywhere. And even when there were strikes, SAG after strikes and union strikes, acting strikes, and then COVID happened, I still performed. I went to Europe where the COVID situation wasn't as dire as it was here. And I performed there when there were no restrictions and they weren't having any issues at the time, when I went to Iceland and Sweden to do the show. So I've never stopped performing, and I'm still performing. And next year will be the 10th year of the Pink Hulk anniversary. I've never missed a year of performing. I've always performed the show multiple times during the year. And then what I'm also proud of are the talkbacks afterwards that I have with shows with the audience that are made up of cancer survivors, doctors, caregivers, loved ones, and those who've never been affected by cancer. And I also love raising money for organizations through getting donations at the shows for those organizations. So for me, it may have closed that door for that Broadway bound show, but it opened up a mansion of doors with the Pink Hulk.
I love that. Now, lest people think that the only fateful thing that evolved for you is the Pink Hulk. You were working on a metastatic breast cancer drug campaign. You've already had breast cancer, you've already had lymphoma, and you're working on this campaign 8 months before you were diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic cancer. How did that inside knowledge, and I believe that drug was part of your treatment.
Yes.
How did this all come together you're 10 years into the Pink Hulk. You're amazing.
Thank you. It was insane. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. And you're absolutely right. I'm in between gigs. I'm a freelance copy editor for ad agencies, and I was working at this medical ad agency, and it was on this drug campaign, as you mentioned, for metastatic breast cancer that had only been on the market. Was pretty new at the time. And I said, gosh, Joel, I was like, this looks like a really great drug if I ever had metastatic breast cancer, but I'm sure it's helping so many people. And then the other thing is, a friend of mine was one of the models for the ad campaign. So it was crazy. So 8 months later, I was diagnosed, and I was like, wait a minute, that drug is in the same family of drugs that my oncologist had offered me. So she had offered, Pepsi-Cola, and I said, can I try Coca-Cola, this drug instead? And she said to me, anything you want, Valerie, absolutely, we'll try it. I'm totally on board. So I started taking this drug, and I have to share with you that I had gone to another agency, but I'm very close with the people at the agency. I brought the medication with me and to the office to visit them. And I said, I want you to look at this. And they were like, what? And then they realized, I said, I am on this drug because of this agency. And I remember talking to my supervisor at the time, and I had confided in her, and we talked about the advantages and of trying the drug. So she also, Mary, had helped me decide to approach my doctor to see that. So I felt very armed with all the knowledge I could, and the drug ended up being the right drug for me, because after 5 months, I got a scan. And I was very nervous because I didn't know I had bone metastases to the rib cage and to the chest area. And then I later found out it had been in my legs as well. So I was really scared. And I thought, well, I bet there's some improvement. I hope there's some improvement. And it turned out that I had 100% response to this drug. And less than
that's just
3% have that. And I've had no evidence of disease since then.
Okay, so hold up. You advocated for a different drug because you had been on an ad campaign. You had an oncologist who said, sounds good. And then you're one of 3% who have a 100% response. Now, I got to roll this back just a moment. I think every person who's had breast cancer or lymphoma lives in a level of low-grade fear of hearing it's back.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So again, how did you process that when they said to you, yeah, you've been through this chemo and you did these things and you got dealt the wrong deck? And you've got it again.
Right. So it's so interesting we're talking about this, because lymphoma, the type I had, was the most curable. So I'm technically cured of lymphoma. So I thought breast cancer works the same way, and breast cancer is very different. So when I was diagnosed the first time at stage 2, I was like, okay, we're done with breast cancer. Oh,
1 second. I just want to ask you to tell us a little bit about your type of breast cancer, because breast cancer is like over 100 diseases.
Oh, yes. I call breast cancer a Rubik's Cube. There are so many combinations. So I was HER2 positive and progesterone positive.
Okay, so for people who speak the code, it's HER2 positive, PR positive, ER negative.
Correct. Yes, ER negative. So I was positive, negative. And so that also means that my breast cancer is more prone to being affected by hormone treatment rather than chemo. So I ended up getting chemo light. But with chemo light, that I also wanted to say to people listening out there, it's because I had lymphoma as well. I shared some of the same drugs that lymphoma and breast cancer had, particularly adriamycin, which I was not allowed to have again for breast cancer. So that's why I had chemo light.
Right. And again, for people who are perhaps new to this, the reason you weren't allowed adriamycin again is adriamycin can only clinically be administered, I think, 4 times to a certain dosage because of cardiotoxicity.
Heart, correct. Absolutely. So that would be, you're absolutely right. The risk was the heart, having heart problems. So I was not given that drug. So I had gotten 2 of the 3 drugs. I was able to get Cytoxin again, which also shares with breast cancer and lymphoma, but I had to have a lesser dose. And also I was hormone positive. So I'm on letrozole now, and we'll talk about that as well on that for life. But I think for me that I was very much blindsided much more with breast cancer than lymphoma because I was shocked that it happened again. And then the other thing when you're talking about knowing your body and you're like, how did you research the drug? For some reason, I knew I had breast or cancer or lymphoma again. So the 3rd time I had cancer, I actually called my oncologist, and this is in the Pink Hulk, and I was like, I think I have cancer again because I had a 9-centimeter tumor of lymphoma in my chest. And also the breast cancer was in the metastatic was in the chest. So I had these chest pains, but I didn't know if it was from lymphoma or breast cancer. But I knew I had cancer, and I basically said, I have cancer. And they're like, well, you have an appointment. I'm sure it's a pulled chest muscle. I'm sure you're fine. But I knew it wasn't. And so I came to the doctor, and then we found out that it was metastatic breast cancer. And how difficult that was the fact that I was opening the Pink Hulk that day in Portland, Oregon, when my doctor called me, because it's a 3-hour time difference, New York and Oregon. So it was 9:45 in the morning, and I was starting tech for the Pink Hulk for a show that night, opening in a festival, and got the news that it was metastatic breast cancer. So I also had a choice, and that's another thing that we talk about, our choices. We have a choice of how we're going to react to this, how we're going to live our life, how we're going to deal with this. And I said, the show must go on. And I did the show that night, and I did all the performances, even though I wasn't feeling great because I had a lot of pain, the cough, all of the symptoms were coming back that I had. And I felt not so great, to be honest. And I ended up doing the shows. And I think that the Pink Hulk, as I love how it inspires and instills courage and hope in people, my own show did that for me because I had to be the Pink Hulk. So I knew that the show is not, it's not about me, it's about the audiences. And I said, well, I'm going to keep doing the show for the people. And I'm just going to have to put this little diagnosis aside and do the performance for the people that came. And it also helped me, which I didn't realize that till after the fact, that my own show helped inspire me because I kept performing throughout the stage 4 diagnosis and still doing that. And then found out that it was interesting because the Pink Hulk had different endings. So at first I was a 2-time cancer survivor. Then I told audiences later on, in the run of the next time, that I had stage 4 cancer, but I'm going to beat it again. And everyone was crying, and they were like, oh my gosh. And then I had to change the ending again to say, well, it was stage 2, then it was stage 4 metastatic, and now there's no evidence of disease. So it was like this really mind crazy thing that happened. And 10 days after I told the audience that I had stage 4 metastatic, and I was like, the Pink Hulk exists. The Pink Hulk is going to survive. Like I had this like tagline, the Pink Hulk persists, and I'm going to beat this cancer. And then 10 days later, I got the test back that it's no evidence of disease. So I believe me, Joelle, I do not want any more changes to the Pink Hulk. I wanted to keep it the same.
Of course.
Of course. Extra.
It's good.
I know. It's good. It's good. It's finished. It's done. Yeah.
Well, but let's tell people, and first off, you're amazing. And
you
I
are
think,
too. Thank you.
well, I did keep working also. I didn't
Right.
have to perform like you do, but I don't think people appreciate how important it is if you can, you couldn't with the
Yeah.
lymphoma, but if you can work and have some things that are more normal, it's
Absolutely.
restorative.
It is. And it's so true. And you had that situation where you were going in for surgery and then found that to prevent breast cancer. And the day before you ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. It's like, what? It's like crazy. But the thing is that what's so important is that we need to tell people, and as survivors as ourselves, that we still are doing the things we love. We don't let cancer stop us. Like it's a detour, right? It's a pause. It's a postponement. It's not a cancellation of everything. And in fact, with lymphoma, during treatment, when I'd lost all my hair and I was in treatment, if I felt well enough, I was performing improv with my improv group and at the American Cancer Society's Hope Lodge for cancer patients. And it was so inspiring for myself and for cancer patients to see me performing, and I look just like them. I'm having a scarf on my head. I'm not feeling great. I understand what they're going through. And I wanted to be an example of, you can't let cancer stop you. And I know that the theatrical endeavors that I had pursued during treatment and even post-treatment now has saved my life. I really do. I think art heals, and I think art healed me. I really do. And I hope with my show that it heals others. And it's had a tremendous impact on people because they know I've walked the walk, I've talked the talk, and so have you. And we're here to tell people, never give up hope. And it's not always going to be a happy ending for people. And I'm sorry for that. I really am. And I'm sorry for their caregivers and loved ones. I just want people to know to keep trying and to keep fighting and trying new things. There are new things all the time coming out. That was a new drug that I had worked on an ad campaign for. So there's always hope. There's always clinical trials. There's always things that could help us survive these cancers.
Yeah,
and I think it's really important to know.
I agree with you.
Yes, there's advancements all the time.
Yeah, I think the message in what you're saying is cancer doesn't stop you from living. Keep living till the last moment. Just keep living. If that means performing, improv, singing, coaching, speaking.
Absolutely. Writing a book. Writing a book. You're great.
Exactly.
Having this podcast.
Exactly.
Yes.
We keep living. So can you tell us a little bit, give us the synopsis of what is the Pink Hulk? And, you've performed it all over the world. After the synopsis, would you tell us a little bit about the most powerful responses you've received?
Absolutely. So the Pink Hulk, One Woman's Journey to Find the Superhero Within, is basically, what I find about the show that is so important is there's a lot of humor in it. There's a lot of humor in it. So the show is about my journey with lymphoma and breast cancer and having this incredible and crazy experience. And so the premise is that I was trying to find love, because I didn't know what was happening with breast cancer. So I was trying to find love, and I'd call up guys and I'd be like, "Hey, I'm starting treatment. I'm not sure what's happening with my breast cancer," and then going back to my old boyfriends or old dates, and it's very funny. And then they're like, "Okay," and then thanks, Valerie, for calling out of the blue, and they were very funny. So I do find love in the end, which is the important part. And then the second part of the show that is new, and that's what makes it funny, because you have to, and I always laugh at the joke, as you have to come see if I have a happy ending, because the thing of it is, with women and breast cancer, and then men too, because men get breast cancer as well, it does affect your sexuality. You are, you're self-conscious with scars, you're self-conscious with hair loss, you feel less than a woman. I know I did, and it was getting back empowering myself as a woman again. And I feel like the pink Hulk is like, and there was weight gain, there was, all these things, these little things that don't seem important, but to us, it's what we wanted that changed because of the cancer. And then the other side of the cancer is with getting the stage 4. And this is also in the show that I had called a metastatic survivor support group. And when I asked for help, the woman was like, well, you have a 3 to 5 year life expectancy. I hate to say you're not going to die of old age. And I was like, what? Like, did you just say that to me? And then I said, and then another question, I was like, well, I do want to find someone. I've not gotten married yet. I'd like to meet someone. And she's like, well, I'm sure you'll find someone who will appreciate the time you have left. And I was like,
oh my God.
what? I mean, yeah. And there was more to that in the show, but to be told that, and, I'm now in year 7. I've surpassed the 3 to 5 year life expectancy lady. And I called her a year later with the no evidence of disease. And I nicely said, you ought to not say that to people, because you have no right to tell anybody when they're going to live, how long they're going to live, and when they're going to die. So it's also this story about being your own advocate. Not only did I find the right drug, but I had an allergic reaction to one of the drugs, the drugs that help your white cell count. And I got an allergic reaction to it, and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, this isn't right. And I was a little poo-pooed, like, oh, it'll clear up. And it kept getting worse. And then finally, I was supposed to get referred to a pulmonologist, and the doctor's office was supposed to make the appointment for me. And I said, forget it. And I got the name of the doctor and the pulmonologist, and I called and I said, what time am I coming in today? Because I'm coming in. If I have to sit there all day and wait, I'm coming in. So I came in, and it was New Year's Eve day, the 31st. And I was like, if it's a holiday, you're open, I'm there. And after I had tests that day, they said, you're allergic, get off of that drug. So what would have happened had I not picked up the phone and made the call myself? And I don't fault the doctors. I know, there's a lot of things they're going through. Nobody's perfect, but I felt like I had to take a stand, and I had to make it happen. And I
think,
also, yeah, go ahead,
Valerie. I actually think that's an important point to pause at, because that's one of the keys to being a pink Hulk, to crushing the cancer curveball, is taking ownership of the journey, of the process, whatever you want to call it, and advocating for yourself. Or I used to say, like, I can outweight your hold music.
Yes, exactly. Oh my gosh, I know. Like, we could go to sleep with the phone in our hand, and it's like the music. I think I will wait till you pick up if it takes all night. And you're absolutely right. And I think that's important. And I do want to say that in the end, I did switch hospitals because I felt that I wasn't getting the right treatment, not like treatment as in cancer, but personal treatment. And I think that's very important, because I felt like it had run its course. I had a 20-year marriage with this hospital, and I felt like it was time to go. And there were certain things that were said and done that I said, it's time to go. And I switched to another hospital, and I've been with them for 7 years. And I'm very happy with that change. So it's also, you're right, the pink Hulk, and what we're all advocating for is to be your own best advocate. If you are not happy with the treatment that you're getting, if you are not happy with the doctors and your treatment, you don't be afraid to leave, because I felt like I needed to leave in order to fully survive, because I didn't feel like I was being taken care of. And I think
that's right.
And that's part of the pink Hulk as well, is that finding those doctors and finding doctors. And, there's this one story, my lymphoma doctor, Dr. Portlack, my nurse overheard her telling people, oh, don't worry about Valerie, she's going to be fine, when I was in the hospital. And the nurse told me that. And to have a doctor that was like believed in my survival. Like she's like, oh, I'm not worried about her. And even after the first chemo treatment, my tumor decreased by 50%. She puts when we had slides, you put on the whiteboard, she's like, your scans are gorgeous. Like it was like, but to have a doctor so enthusiastic about survival and as happy as you are that you're on the road to recovery, there's nothing more special than that, including surrounding yourself with friends and family who also believe in your survival. And I think that's really important too.
So there are two things in there. One is find a doctor who believes in you. They're still honest with you, but believes in you. I remember when my doctor said, we're not taking you to tumor board. Your cancer's basic. I said, yay, basic.
Wow, basic.
And two, sometimes people are reluctant to share the side effects, to share what else is happening. They don't want to be a bother. They don't want to be a whiner. They don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill. I mean, it's cancer. What does it mean that I'm having trouble swallowing? And I think what you're pointing out, not only do you have to tell them everything, but you have to ensure they're hearing you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like with the whole breathing thing, I wasn't listened to. And I was like, this is not good. And I think like there's so many little things that even now, like I have to I've checked every 6 weeks for the rest of my life and get blood tests. I even ask for the littlest needle to draw the blood because there are certain sizes of needles. And I'm like, can we try the smallest needle? Because I remember I was in the hospital for a complication with lymphoma, and they were like, oh, we're going to give you this giant needle in case you have a transfusion. I'm like, well, and it was so painful. And I was like, what we can do, why don't we do that? Even down to the Band-Aid, when they put the Band-Aid on, I have hair on my arms. So if they put on that big bandage, I feel like I'm getting a free waxing, And so I asked if I could get the bandage, the cloth Band-Aid. I mean, these little things like that. And they always reach for the Band-Aid. God bless them. That's fine. But they're not dealing with someone who has hair on their arms. So I was like, it hurts taking that off. So even the littlest things to speak up. And I even remember with chemotherapy, you're discouraged to use ibuprofen because it lowers the white cell count. And I remember I was in a lot of pain, and this doctor in training, a student doctor, had given me this prescription of 2,500 milligrams of ibuprofen to take for the chest pain. And I was like, I kind of remember, and I wrote this down, taking notes. I'm not really supposed to be taking ibuprofen. So when I showed my doctor, I'm like, what about this prescription? Aren't I not supposed to be taking it? She ripped it up in front of me, and I never saw that student doctor again. So it's also, poor student. But I feel like we have to also, on the flip side of arming ourselves with knowledge, the other advice is don't go down the rabbit hole of looking at everything on the internet and every side effect, that your eyeballs will pop out and after 10 days, your hair will catch on fire. I mean, that's, there's some scary things out there. And I think it's important not to look at that and then think this is you. And
you don't need to invent more potential side effects. You need to be aware. And, there are some very unusual side effects, and there are some more common ones. And with the common ones, there's often proactive things you can do to reduce their severity or what have you, but you have to ask.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting, over the almost now 27 years I've dealt with cancer, everything's electronic now, right? So the other thing, and I will admit this, and this just happened, I saw the report of my blood work before my doctor did, and there was an elevated test that I freaked out about.
Of
you
course.
know, and I was like, this is higher now. And then she was like, nope, don't worry about it. That can happen. But I threw myself in a tizzy about it. But that's the scary part. You can look at before I can look at my portal at midnight and see all these things that come in that my doctor, her workday doesn't start the next day, so she won't be seeing it until the next day. So I think that's also important as well, is to be careful what you read on your own report, because it's gobbledygook. It's like, well, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. That must mean something horrible. And it wasn't. So I got myself probably high blood pressure for nothing, So I think
Yeah.
that's really important. And it's a blessing and a curse that we have so much accessible to us. The internet was just starting when I had cancer. So I didn't have all those websites that will tell you what the side effects are, the adverse effects, the common side effects. But now you can. So I think it's important to monitor yourself, because you can go down a very dark rabbit hole. And I'm the first to admit that I did.
Yeah, I had to remind myself that I'm not a doctor and I don't know what I'm looking at with these test results. And if my doctor's not concerned, then I'm not going to be concerned.
Absolutely. And to get back to what you're saying about the pink Hulk, and that's a long story short about the pink Hulk, is that's what this is about, being your advocate. And I think that I just did the show in Wyoming, and like some of the things that have come out of it have just been so grateful for, to help people. And there's a woman there with her husband. And afterwards, she came up to me, and I would not have thought she was a patient, and she came up to me and she's like, I'm so glad that I came, because, I needed to see this, going through what I'm going through. And her husband said, I'm seeing a lot of what my wife is going through. And you brought up a lot of topics that we need to talk about. And it was really just I was so grateful for that. And that even overseas, people telling me that when I was in Sweden, they said, we're not a community. We're not an Oprah society where we talk about our feelings, and to have the talk back afterwards where we can express ourselves when we don't really normally do. It was really helpful to be able not to be scared to say, I feel this way. I feel this way. And I remember one woman I wear a cape at the end, and she put the cape on. She's like, can I borrow your cape? And she started flying all through the theater. And we had a talk back afterwards, and she said she wasn't happy with her doctors. And then the whole panel and I were like, leave them, go somewhere where you feel comfortable with. And I remember someone who saw the show was starting 3 months after 4 months after she saw the show, she was starting radiation. And she reached out to me and she said, I'm thinking about you today because I need your Hulk powers, So it's really been a really gratifying experience to be able to help people, because I got help, right? I wanted to return the favor, pay it forward. I wouldn't be here sitting with you today if I didn't have the doctors that I have, the friends that I have, and the family that I have to get me through this, because you can't do this alone. And I don't want anyone to be alone, and I don't want anyone to feel alone, because it can be very lonely,
Yeah. Obviously, it's why I do what I do as well.
Exactly.
So, Valerie, I want to switch gears, but before I do, if people want to see the Pink Hulk or bring the Pink Hulk to their community, how can they do that?
Thank you. Well, you can email me. Thank you so much at pinkhulkplay@gmail.com. I have a website, www.pinkhulkplay.com. You can find me on Instagram, Valerie David _pinkhulkplay. And I'm also on Facebook as the Pink Hulk as well. So It's very easy to find me. So if you are interested in bringing me, and the other thing, I've been keynote speakers. I know you have too as well. I've been keynote speakers at Fred Hutch in Seattle and Breast Friends in Oregon. So not only do I do the show, but I conduct improv workshops. I almost every month, I do a workshop at Red Door Community, doing an improv workshop for cancer survivors and patients, which Red Door was formerly Gilda's Club of New York. So I love doing creative writing workshops. So you get more than just the show. There are talkbacks, and there's also classes that I do as well.
So let me put a fine point on this. You want to bring Valerie David to your community. She's given you lots of ways to reach out, and she's going to lift up all kinds of people. Now, it so happens, I mean, this episode's going to come out in a couple months, but the day we're recording it is a very solemn day. It's October 7th, 2025. Now, you actually have a second touring show.
Yes.
And that's not about the Pink Hulk. It's about baggage from Baghdad, becoming my father's daughter. And this is about your father and his family fleeing Baghdad from a pogrom, which is a government-sanctioned assault on Jews in 1941. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Baggage from Baghdad and how the story of your family's resilience influenced the Pink Hulk?
Yes. I come from a very strong, courageous family, and their bravery with what they went through has helped me in my life, especially with cancer. My father and his family had to flee Iraq with only what they could carry in Baghdad. In 1941, they were evacuated. And again, leaving with only what they could carry, forced to leave, have to build a new life in America and start over again. And unfortunately, so much of this is happening in so many instances all over. It's not, it's not just a Jewish story. It's a story that is about any peoples who are, people who are immigrating and forced to leave because of race, religion, anything, sexual orientation, religious beliefs. And I think that it's a story about acceptance, and it's shedding a light on the growing prejudice that's happening now and here in the US and around the world, that we must not have history repeat itself. And the thing that really struck me about Baggage from Baghdad becoming my father's daughter is that I wanted this to be a history lesson. I didn't want this to be timely. I didn't want this to reflect the times that we're living in. And unfortunately it is. And it reflects on the anti-Semitism, but also it's a reflection of all types of prejudice around the world. Again, it's not just a Jewish story. Anyone can relate to it. And in fact, when I did it in Vermont, there was a Muslim father who came up to me and he said to me, Valerie, I had to flee Iraq. I'm Muslim, had to flee Iraq in 2005 with my 5-year-old daughter with only what I could carry. And he said, I related so much to your story, and that, what? We're family. We are family. And he hugged me. And that really meant so much to the both of us, that we both understand, and it shouldn't be happening in any form, way, shape, or form. And I think that my father had gone through cancer, and my grandmother and their resiliency, they're so strong. When they came to America in the 40s, they came. And then in the 50s, my grandmother was diagnosed with lymphoma. And this was in a North Shore hospital on Long Island. And with all the patients who had lymphoma, they didn't even have chemo yet. They only had radiation. They gave radiation. She was the only one who survived. Wow. And she survived another 35 years after that. And then my own father, it's amazing. He had prostate cancer, and then it came back as stage 4. And when he was 88, he volunteered for a clinical study and started chemo again. So it was just, and I remember my cousin David, when I got cancer the second time, he was like, You're going to be fine. Look at the stock you come from. And I was like, yeah. And their resiliency to have to pick up their pieces. And when they fled, keep in mind, my grandfather had to stay behind. Like the men had to stay behind and the women and children were evacuated. They weren't sure if they would ever see their dad again. And my grandfather said to my father when they were evacuated, you have to take care of your mother and your sister now. You have to be the man of the house now. And
How
my
old was
dad
your
is
dad?
8 years old.
Right. Like
8 years old.
crazy. All right.
Crazy. Yes.
Let's
yeah.
Incredible story. And thank you for sharing it.
Oh,
And
thank you.
such a human story, like the desire to be safe and to be able to live safely, love
safely,
and
practice your
thing.
religion safely.
Just to be
Be
safe.
safe in your health and in your home. And I think that these two shows, The Pink Hulk and Baggage from Baghdad, are so important for very different reasons.
Right.
But
Right.
the message is hope for both of them, resilience, and to never give up hope. So they do share that.
Like a hope sandwich.
A hope,
hope,
it's
resilience,
a hope sandwich.
We made a
it's
hope
like
sandwich.
Peanut butter and jelly, or chocolate and peanut butter Reese's.
Perfect. Your chocolate's in my peanut butter. Love that ad campaign.
Yes, and being Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely.
It's
All
an
right.
honor. Thank you.
Rapid fire. This is the very short responses, Valerie. So just first thing that comes to your mind. I'm going to give you a sentence, a line, and you just reply. Let's do some improv. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Complete the sentence. The biggest myth about cancer treatment is
that you can't do anything and it's debilitating and you can't keep living your life.
excellent. What's one thing you wish every oncologist would tell their patients on day one?
Never give up hope, and we'll find a way to make this work.
Beautiful. If you could change one thing about how our healthcare system treats cancer patients, what would it be?
Stop making them pay out-of-pocket expenses that are so high, have high deductibles, and have their drugs be more than a house payment a week.
Did you see that today the state of New York released requirements that all cancer patients have cold capping paid for by insurance?
Yep. That's exactly what we want to hear.
Right. Go New York.
Why do we have to live and survive? Why do we have to have that extra burden of having to pay these costs, these
Totally.
out-of-pocket costs, which are
Totally.
thousands out of pocket, and that deductible?
Yeah. No, and for anyone listening, if you're at the beginning, you do want to know your deductible and your annual out-of-pocket max and your lifetime out-of-pocket max. And ask for help early if financially it's becoming toxic.
Yes, I've gotten my bills pardoned. I asked for a pardon, not a payment plan, a pardon. So
Excellent.
So ask, and you shall receive.
Ask for what you need. Okay, number 4. What's your advice for someone looking to kick cancer's ass?
Stop looking at the internet and going
Except
down the
this
rabbit
podcast.
hole. Yeah. Watch this podcast. You must watch this podcast, and also to start to meditate and journal and start finding coping mechanisms that you haven't tried before.
Yeah, I loved that you, when writing was too much, you just dictated. You voiced it.
Or
It's
audio.
great.
Yep. Keep a
It's great.
diary.
All right, fill in the blank. The Pink Hulk superpower is actually blank disguised as anger.
Bravery and courage and determination.
Beautiful. Valerie, you have an extraordinary ability to transform life's most devastating curveballs into creativity, artistry, strength, service. I so admire how you took your Broadway skills, talents, and dreams and created this whole new artistic expression spread all over the world. The Pink Hulk, Baggage from Baghdad. You want to find Valerie David. You want to bring her to your community. So look for the Pink Hulk play or www.pinkhulkplay.com. And Valerie, we know we don't want to change the ending again. What's next?
Well, Thank you, first off, for having me on here. It is such an honor, and I admire you so much, and you're an inspiration to me and to so many others. So thank you.
My
Well,
pleasure.
next, it's the 10-year anniversary of the Pink Hulk in the next coming up, and I'm planning a big 10-year celebration with the Pink Hulk and inviting all the talkback guests from before and having it done at a theater and having this big celebration. I can't
wanna be
believe it's 10
there.
years. I know. I want you to come. I know.
I want to
I'm
be there. I
like,
want to be on your
yeah.
panel.
I know. I'd love for you to. Yeah, we'll make it happen.
Let's make
you
it
have
happen.
an invitation to come to New York.
Okay, and we need swag. We need
total
10-year anniversary swag.
We do. I have Pink Hulk pens, but I think I'm now going to get more swag that
I think
have
we need
10-year
capes.
anniversary. Capes.
I think we need 10-year anniversary capes.
Capes
That's what I think we need.
Capes and cakes.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right,
so
Valerie.
absolutely. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
If this episode gave you hope, tools, or a different way of seeing things, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can find show notes, bonus content, and links to Valerie David at kcapodcast.com. Until next week, keep kicking cancer's ass.